Welcome to this video where we're going to talk about what is a drug, a generic drug, biologic, and biosimilar, and what are their main differences. So first, let's talk about what is a drug. The definitions I'm presenting in this video are taken primarily from the US Food and Drug Administration site. Firstly, as a drug is a substance intended for the use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. It's intended to affect the structure or any function of the body. It does include the subtype of biologics, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Biological products are included within this definition and are generally covered by the same laws and regulations, but differences exist in their manufacturing processes. For example, drugs are produced by a chemical process, whereas biologics are produced via a biological process. Drug does not include food or device or any part or accessory of a device. Now let's talk about what a generic drug is. A generic drug is the same as a brand name drug in dosage, safety, strength, how it is taken, quality, performance, and intended use. Before approving a generic drug product, FDA requires many rigorous tests and procedures to assure that the generic drug can be substituted for the brand name drug. The FDA bases evaluations of substitutability, or a term called therapeutic equivalence, of generic drugs on scientific evaluations. By law, a generic drug must contain the identical amounts of the same active ingredient as the brand name product. Drug products evaluated as therapeutically equivalent can be expected to have equal effect and no difference when substituted for the brand name product. It's also important to note that there may be minor differences between a brand name and a generic drug, for example, its appearance or the inactive ingredients contained in either of the product. Separate rules do apply for biosimilars, which we'll talk about shortly. Biologics or biological products are used to treat many illnesses, including chronic skin diseases such as psoriasis, inflammatory bowel disease such as Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, arthritis, kidney conditions, diabetes, cancer, and many other diseases. Biologics are generally large, complex molecules that are made from living sources, such as bacteria, yeast, and animal cells. Because they generally come from living organisms, biologics inherently contain many slight variations from batch to batch, and their structures are generally more complex than those of other medications. As a result, biologics are often more complicated to purify, process, and manufacture. There are many types of biologic products approved in the United States, such as monoclonal antibodies, insulin, vaccine, and allergenic products. A question that many people ask is, how do biologics differ from conventional drugs? In this table here, I've highlighted a few of the differences between the two types. A drug or a conventional drug is typically produced by chemical synthesis, where identical copies of the active ingredient can be made because of a standardized manufacturing process. Drugs are usually lower in molecular weight, have a well-defined structure, mostly process independent, and completely categorized. They are more stable to external conditions. They are mostly non-immunogenic, and generic drugs, which are marketed for under a brand name product, it must show bioequivalence. On the right side, under a biologic, you'll see that a biologic is produced by living cell cultures, and active ingredients are impossible to fully copy because of the specialized and variability in the manufacturing process from batch to batch. Biologics typically have a higher molecular weight. They're complex, heterogeneous in structure, strongly process dependent, impossible to fully categorize the molecular composition and heterogeneity. They are more unstable as compared to conventional drugs. For example, sensitive to external conditions like heat. They are more immunogenic in nature, and a biosimilar, which is the term that's used to describe those products which are quote unquote generics of biologics, which they're it's typically not a accurate term. Uh, Biosimilars, they undergo complex comparability exercises to see if they are equivalent in terms of safety and efficacy to a biologic, but there's also a term called interchangeable biosimilar, which are more similar to the generic drug laws, which we'll talk about in the upcoming slide. Now let's talk about what is a biosimilar and how it's different from a biologic. Earlier we talked about the difference between a drug and a generic drug. Biologics also have a quote unquote generic similar product called a biosimilar that's associated with it. However, uh, the relationship between a drug and a generic drug is different from a biologic and biosimilar, as I will explain right now. So a biosimilar is a biologic medication that is highly similar to and has no clinically meaningful differences from an existing FDA-approved biologic called a reference product. Compared with the reference biologic, biosimilars are made with the same types of living sources, are given to the patient in the same way, and have the same strength, dosage, potential treatment benefits, and potential side effects. A biosimilar may be used in patients who have previously used a reference product or not have previously received a reference product. All FDA-approved biologics and biosimilars undergo a rigorous evaluation to help ensure their safety, effectiveness, and quality. A biologic reference product is approved as a standalone application and must contain data to demonstrate its safety and effectiveness, while a biosimilar is approved through an abbreviated pathway that generally avoids the need to conduct as many costly and lengthy clinical trials. A proposed biosimilar is compared to and evaluated against the reference biologic product to verify that it is highly similar to and has no clinically meaningful differences in terms of safety, purity, and potency from the reference product. All FDA-approved biosimilars, including interchangeable biosimilars, must be highly similar to and have no clinically meaningful differences from the reference product, as I explained earlier. However, there is a difference for how an interchangeable biosimilar may be prescribed and dispensed to a patient. An interchangeable biosimilar is a biosimilar that meets additional requirements, so a pharmacist may substitute an interchangeable biosimilar for its reference drug product without consulting the prescriber, depending on the state pharmacy law. So, for example, how a pharmacist can substitute a generic drug for a brand name drug, uh, depending on which state you're obtaining the biosimilar, the pharmacist may substitute a interchangeable biosimilar with the reference biosimilar, reference biological product. FDA does not evaluate or approve a biosimilar as interchangeable unless a company requests it. So for approval as an interchangeable biosimilar, manufacturers must provide additional data that reflect how the interchangeable biosimilar may be used in the marketplace with patients. Like generic drugs, patients receiving their medications through their drug pharmacies may switch between a brand name biologic and an interchangeable biosimilar. To assess the safety of switching, manufacturers generally conduct studies in which patients alternate between the reference product and the interchangeable biosimilar and compare those patients to patients who are just being treated with the reference product. The results must show no decrease in effectiveness or increase in safety risk associated with the switching. Thus, these are the additional standards that a manufacturer must show to obtain the interchangeability permissibility. While this additional information helps FDA to determine the safety of a pharmacy level substitution, this does not mean that an interchangeable biosimilar is safer or more effective than other biosimilars. Thank you for watching this video, and remember to subscribe, like, and share. And if you have suggestions for any other videos, please do enter that into the comments. Thank you.